Welcome to Tales from Flat Space, a podcast of science fiction and fantasy by yours truly, Gina A. Pond. Just know that the stories in this podcast may contain content that could be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. So, this is part 3, Chaos, chapter 40, Giannis. The doctors decided that my foot was just bruised, so I left the med bay. Instead of heading back to my quarters, I wandered around Sun Tzu. I wish I could have gone to see Izumi, but today was the only day of the week they took for themselves, and I didn't want to bother them. I ended up in the arboretum, wandering through the trees, carefully manicured flower beds, and patches of grass. It smelled of green and growing things, which reminded me of Geneva. Strangely, I wasn't homesick for the most part, even though I did miss the George for Nico's sake. I came across an artificial pond with koi and lily pads in the center of the gardens. There was a small copse of trees next to it that made a semi-private spot to sit, so I parked my chair next to the bench overlooking the pond. The fish swam in lazy circles, and I let myself just drift in the patterns, relaxing like Izumi had been teaching me. I breathed in and out, trying not to really think of anything. Time seemed to stand still, nothing moving except for the koi. "Well, son, you seem to find yourself at a crossroads, eh?" said a voice. I turned to see an old, dark-skinned man in a black suit, red shirt, and a wide-brimmed black hat. He was sitting on the bench next to me, and he held a cane with the head of a crow on it, in silver. I wondered who he was. I'd never seen him before, and while Sun Tzu was huge, it didn't have such a large population that I wouldn't have noticed this man. Yeah, I guess so. Who are you?" I asked. The man smiled widely, showing his teeth. "Oh, I'm known by many names, but I suppose for now you can just call me Legba." "Okay. You know what you're gonna do next?" he asked. I sighed. I have no idea. I've never thought about life outside home and teaching. Never thought I'd leave Geneva, to be honest. Now my whole family's been uprooted because of me, and they're at a loss too. That's a lot to carry on your shoulders, friend. What if I told you that the Spy Master's going to give you an opportunity? What kind of opportunity? He chuckled. "Oh, that would be ruining the surprise. But one thing I can tell you is that you really should take it. And when you do, some of my people will be coming with you. They want to learn more about you and teach you more about us. You'll know when they come to you." "Your people?" "Yep." The man stood up, leaning on the cane. "Look for my friend Lazarus. He'll be coming soon," he said. He started to walk towards the trees, then turned around. "We ain't ever given up on you, Giannis. No matter what you decided about your body, your destiny would still be the same." I stared after him. I blinked, and the man disappeared. Time seemed to move again, and the light in the arboretum was going into sunset mode. When I looked at the pond, the koi were all at the edge, pointed in the direction where Legba had gone. "Lazarus," I said to myself. The koi scattered when I spoke the name, going back to circling the pond. Where had I heard that name before? I knew I recognized it, but I couldn't remember why. One of the koi came up to the edge of the pond and blew some bubbles at me. Okay, I'm going," I said. Not sure exactly what I meant. The last koi seemed to look at me for a moment, then swam away. I activated my chair, left the arboretum, thoughtful. 2 days later, I'd almost convinced myself that I had imagined Legba talking with me when John Smith asked to join the family for dinner. We exchanged pleasantries during the meal. Nico asked him all sorts of questions about Sonny, which Mr. Smith answered with a great deal of patience. After the meal, we all sat in the living area, with Nico curled up on John's lap with his George. Even the twins were still awake, since John asked if they could stay for the discussion. Una and Lena were surprised, but allowed it. The rest of the family looked confused, but curious about what the head of the librarians wanted to talk to us about. Well, friends, you know that it's unlikely you'll be able to go back to Geneva for a long time, for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is because of Giannis's chosen method of treatment. I wanted to talk to all of you about an opportunity we have that could work for all of you. He gestured vaguely around the room. As you know, nearly 3 years ago now, we destroyed the new Harmonist influence in Unity, but we knew of their influence well before then. As their numbers increased, the AIs ran all the possible scenarios, and two came up over and over again. The first was what happened. We defeated the new Harmonists, but diplomatic relations have deteriorated to the point of possible war. The second possibility was that we'd not defeat the new Harmonists and be at war with Unity. It was taken over by them. One of the AI's strongest desires is to ensure that humanity survives. We are reassured to know now that one of the AI siblings who left about 500 years ago found one of the 5 generation ships and created a community of humans that are at least 6 months by Survey jump drive to get to. However, now that Survey knows where they are, Unity will eventually know about them too. Before we knew about Loki's humans, the AIs decided to create a generation ship of our own, with a mission to leave our galaxy and go to the next closest. Their name is Mercury, and the construction is almost complete. We're hoping that with the opening of negotiations with Unity, Mercury will be an exploration ship, not an evacuation ship. Regardless, it will be leaving in the next few months, either with a full complement of 10,000 or a colony complement of 2,000. You want our family to go on this Mercury ship? Asked Yuri. Yes, we've been recruiting experts quietly from all across Survey to be Mercury's crew, but all of you would be needed in your specialties, particularly Lena and Yuri, with the farmland and animal stocks. Una and Margaret, your education backgrounds would be essential for the education programming. Ben and Georg, you're both excellent at organization and logistics, which will be desperately needed. The children will be your future leaders, and there will be other children for them to interact with. John Smith looked around the room, his assessing gaze on each of their faces. You'd also be some of the few Unity-born humans on the ship, and will be able to help ensure that your future generations will understand humanity's past. What about me? I asked. John looked at me for a moment, then said, You have a unique opportunity on us. Because you chose to have the high-order bots for your treatment, we'd also like you to be Mercury's captain, if you and Mercury are willing and compatible. We would need you for your computer and teaching skills, regardless of whether you decide to be Mercury's captain or not. The whole family stared at me. I opened my mouth and closed it, then said, Me? Yes, you were head of your department for many years, and you are a capable teacher. Mercury is a brand new AI. As Sunny always tells me, AIs need humans to learn from, and captains are very special teachers for them. Captains are their most trusted humans. Sunny believes that you have the qualities of a captain, and you already have the bots which would allow you to communicate directly with Mercury. But why not Poppy or Uncle Ben? They're the soldiers of the family. Survey captains aren't necessarily soldiers, said Sunny. Una jumped. She still hadn't gotten used to the AI chiming in on conversations. The only captain who is a soldier is Musashi's admiral, really. Even the first captain is not part of our military. Captains are usually people that the AI likes, and who they feel they can trust, or who they need to learn things from. They may be people who have a particular understanding of the purpose of their AIs, as Control does for me, or they may have a broad understanding of how humans are. Some captains even compare the relationship to a marriage. You, Giannis, have an understanding of humanity that is quite unique, and I think you'd be a good fit for my sibling. Oh, I see. I think we'll need to talk it over, I said. Yes, you should. It's why I invited the children to hear this as well. Please consider their voices in this decision. In Survey, children are not kept out of the loop on these sorts of major life choices. He gently moved the sleeping Nico onto a blanket on the couch and leaned forward. I want to reiterate that this ship will be leaving our galaxy and not coming back for many generations, if at all. It's all right if some of you would like to stay in survey space. We have plenty of opportunities here, both planet-side and on survey ships. The only one of you who has any limitation on where you can be is Giannis, as his bots must be on an AI ship to function properly. Most of survey is shipbound, so there's still plenty of opportunity for you if you decide not to accept. John stood up. There's still at least a few months before I need your final decision, as we don't want Mercury to leave until we know how the Unity negotiations turn out. If you have any other questions about Mercury, feel free to ask me or Sunny. I do ask that you not discuss Mercury with anyone else who doesn't know about them, however, as it is top secret. John went to kneel in front of the twins. Mika, Arya, do you understand what top secret means? Wide-eyed, Mika replied, that we can't tell other people about Mercury, right? That's right, said John. You can only talk to your parents, grandparents, Uncles Giannis, Ben, and Yuri, me and Sunny about what you just heard now. Marcus doesn't know about Mercury yet. I know that will be hard, but we need to keep it a secret to keep Mercury safe. Why? Asked Arya. John thought for a moment. Because there are some people who would be mad to know that Mercury exists. And also, there are some people who might be really mad that survey about other things and try to go to war with the AIs. Mercury will bring people away from the places where they could get hurt, and we want to make sure that no one could follow Mercury when they leave. So that bad people couldn't hurt the people on Mercury? Asked Mika. That's right. Now, Sunny and I are working hard to make sure that the bad people stay away, and we have lots of people who work for us, too. Okay, said Mika, looking at Arya. We could keep a secret. I know you can. And you should tell your family how you feel about Mercury and their mission. It's important for them to know what you think. We will, said Arya, raising her chin. I didn't doubt that at all, knowing the twins. Good, said John, who stood up. I'll take my leave now so you can start your discussions. John nodded and left. None of us spoke for a long time. My mind went back to what Legba had said about an opportunity that John was going to give me, and that he'd said I should take it. It felt as if I was being pulled toward Mercury like a compass needle. It felt right, and Legba had mentioned that this was destiny. I didn't know about destiny, but I knew then that even if not all my family came with me, I would go. I had a chance to do something incredible that has never been done before. Something that I would have never dreamed of. I looked up at the rest of the family and said, I want to go. I want to try. No one said anything at first, but then Nico's small toddler voice said from the couch, I go with Uncle Yana. We all stared at the sleepy toddler who was hugging his George. Wasn't he just asleep? I asked. Yuna nodded. You know, Yuna, Nico can be kind of spooky sometimes, said Yuri. I know, but you know what's weirder? He's never wrong. I smiled. Chapter 41. Jenny. I entered the Admiral's quarters, taking a deep breath. Each time the Admiral came back from negotiation preparations on Lightbringer, he looked worse. I wasn't completely terrified, but I was still worried. I felt very young and underprepared. You are young, said Musashi-sensei in my head, but you have me and the XO and the Abbot and all the other soldiers to help you. This isn't Unity Fleet where missteps are the end of your career. Trust in your Sangha. I know that intellectually, Musashi-sensei, but emotions don't really respond to logic, I replied. That is true, he said. There came a chuckle from the couch where the Admiral was propped up with a portable desk. Next to him was a small end table covered in bottles of pills, the remnants of a half-eaten meal, and a water bottle. Well, you seem to have taken to the bots pretty readily, he said. I pulled a chair over to the couch, bowed, and sat down. Well, I know a strategic advantage when I see it, sir, especially when people are asking me things I don't know the answer to. He smiled. Yes, that's quite useful. It's been particularly useful talking with Lucifer. You can talk with other AI ships, but they and Mia have to allow it and send the command to your bots. It's a little weird when they are in proximity with each other. I don't mind it, but it can get confusing. I don't know how the AI psychologist does it. AI psychologist? The first Admiral's partner was a psychologist, and because of the Loki investigation, they ended up having open-channel bots and could talk to any of the AIs. Hef came up with the idea of a psychologist who serves the AI exclusively, and the siblings and Alex agreed to it. For a long time, there was only just one at any given time, but in the last 100 years, the fleet has grown so big that there are usually 2 or 3. They come to check up on Mia and Sunny regularly, because of the nature of their jobs. I don't remember who's assigned to Mia these days. He closed his eyes for a moment. Helene, right, she lives on Hestia. I nodded. But that's not why I called you here. We've just had a picket from John Smith, and they have a major clandestine op that they need to run. Apparently, they found the source of that program you and the others found on New York, and have created a countermeasure. Apparently, the countermeasure needs to be delivered and deployed at roughly the same time on all Unity stations and colonies. Are they recruiting from UI? We probably have enough people to get it to the stations, but not to every colony, especially since Sunny lost his contacts in UI, from what I understand. The Admiral smiled proudly. Yes, they have new connections to UI from your friend Marcus, and you'll be coordinating with him and John Smith on deployment. Right, I said automatically, but then realized what the man had said. Wait, what? I need to stay with the negotiation team and start the initial negotiations with the Unity representative. I need to convince him that we need to deploy this countermeasure on his ship when he gets there, since all Unity servers have been compromised, and he'll be here before we release it. Sunny is going to send one of the data keys to Lucifer via a picket. Yes, sir, I said with some trepidation. Are you sure? He held up a hand. I wouldn't have chosen you if I didn't think you could handle the job. Jenny, like I've said before, you've done more in your 30 years than most people do in their lifetime. You'll gain more confidence over time, but you are capable of this. Just as I was when the Admiral before me retired and I was alone in the job. I was nervous, but I gained confidence in time, and so will you. Trust in the Sangha, trust in your intuition. And if you can't trust yourself, trust my judgment. I've come to know you during these few months, and I am fully convinced that my choice was right. I nodded. I'll do my best, sir. I took another deep breath and looked at the side table again. Don't you start about me resting, apprentice, he scolded. I looked him in the eyes and could see the gentle good humor there. I wouldn't dream of it, sir, I said. When do you go back to Lightbringer? In the morning, now that my regular doctor has seen me and I've made some arrangements with Mia. Dying is a strange process, Jenny. Even some priests get weird around those who are dying. I'll never truly be gone, though, since Mia has all my memories. It's a comfort, in a way, to know that part of me is relatively immortal. Put a hand on mine. I do wish we had a longer time together, though. I nodded again, nearly afraid to speak. It was strange how close we had become in such a short time. At first I thought it was just because he had made me his apprentice, since he and I were a rare thing in Survey, Unity-born captains. But it didn't take long before he became more than a mentor, priest, and superior officer. He was a father figure I didn't know I needed. It had healed something in me that I didn't even know needed healing. I wish we did too. You've been the closest thing I've ever had to a real father. I managed to say it without my voice completely breaking. And you're the closest thing I've had to a daughter. I should have talked to you more during your training. I knew you were watching me, sir, and you did talk to me, and each of those conversations were something I needed to hear at the right time. He patted my arm, then took away his hand. I wiped my eyes. We were silent for several moments, then he said, "Go on. You should get some rest. Sun Tzu will be here tomorrow for the briefing and to coordinate planning." "Yes, sir. Good night, sir." I stood up and bowed to him. When I looked at him, he was smiling, but something about him seemed almost otherworldly, as if there was some inner light that had become visible. In that moment, he was as beautiful and remote as the stars. The Admiral went back to his tablet, and I turned and left the room. I had a feeling that we had said more than just good night. Vice Admiral Lucia, who was acting as my temporary secretary, came to my room first thing in the morning, while I was still having breakfast. She was a very short woman, old enough to be my great-grandmother, but ninth Dan herself. Having sparred with her a few times, though, I knew she wasn't to be underestimated because she was old. I also found out that she was the one who coordinated the New Harmony mission with the Admiral. Lucia had been off ship during my training year in her role as a Vice Admiral, but in the last few months she had become a parental figure to me. She's one of the few people I could really talk to about New Harmony with. I smiled at her as she came in. Mia had already let me know that the Admiral had left, so I knew she had seen him off. Her and the Admiral had been friends even before he had become the apprentice. "Was he all right this morning?" I asked. "He tried to refuse the armchair, but the nurse said he could either sit in the chair or she'd carry him to the demon. Yvette is one of those scary nurses, so I didn't say a word." I laughed. "Oh, yeah, I met her. I think she really could have carried him. I'd offer her a Dan test if she'd take it." "I'm sure she'd pass it, too," the older woman said. "Sun Tzu should be here soon, from what Musashi-sensei told me this morning." "Yes, Lucia, Sun Tzu is on his way. He had to stop near Unity Space to allow the S-Demon to disembark for Unity Hub," said Musashi-sensei. "John Smith and his UI guests are going to coordinate the inner colonies from there. Marcus Roner will be coordinating the outer colonies with you." "Right, thank you for the update," I said. "How many volunteers is he looking for?" asked Lucia. "Approximately 150. He has 50 librarian volunteers that can be spared, and we need to add 50 soldiers to make the outer colony drops. The rest will be pilots," said Musashi-sensei. "What's the likelihood of people getting blown by chaos?" I asked. "Sun Tzu and Control say that it's low for the stations, since they'll be picketing the keys directly to UI agents. On the colonies, it's more likely, since the outer colonies are much smaller and they will be more visible." "Do you think we'll get enough volunteers, Lucia?" I asked. "I think so, especially if you release the information that this program was behind the New Harmonists in the New York colony. A lot of our people have friends and family in Unity. We also had a larger number of Unity Fleet people come to Musashi in the last 5 years or so, and I think many of them will want to fight back against this. They're soldiers, even the pilots, so if you're honest with them about the risks, you'll get the people you need." "All right, Lucia. Then let's send out the notices, and we'll schedule the briefing after Marcus gets here. Marcus didn't give us a deadline yet, did he?" "No," said Musashi-sensei. "Sun Tzu said that they are delivering that in person, as they don't trust comms or pickets. Chaos may not be on the survey ships, but Control insisted on the extra caution. Given his prediction accuracy, no one argued the point." I nodded. "Makes sense, Musashi-sensei," I said. "Anything else for today?" "Isn't that enough?" Lucia asked. "Well, yes, but the rest of the ship doesn't stop just because we have a new mission," I pointed out. "Jesus, Jenny, you already sound like him," Lucia said. "I'll take that as a compliment." I smiled. "You should. The only other thing is that the squadron for Lightbringer left with the Admiral. The rest the XO can handle, since it's mostly some of the new recruits and personnel transfers. The XO is going to reroute all the new recruits dirtside until we're done with this and the negotiations." "That makes sense. Good." I scrubbed my face with my hands and yawned. "You didn't sleep well last night?" Lucia asked. "No. I talked to the Admiral for a while last night, then I had a nightmare I can't remember. I'm fine, though." Lucia stared at me for a moment, then shook her head. You're not. That's understandable, given everything that's happened to you in the last few years and all that's going on now. But you need to sleep. Musashi-sensei, how long before Sunsu gets here? Approximately 5 hours, he said. Good. I'm ordering you back to bed, apprentice. You're no good to anyone if you're exhausted. Yes, ma'am, I said with a salute. I was tired enough not to argue. Instead of leaving me to my nap, Lucia went for the food printer and dialed something in. When it finished, she handed me a warm mug. What is it? Hot milk with a little bit of cinnamon. It'll help. I can't promise it'll keep away nightmares, but it'll help you get to sleep. I'll have Musashi-sensei wake you once they're here. Thanks, Lucia. For everything, I said. She bowed and left. I sat sipping the hot milk for a while. It was really delicious and soothing. I was deliberately trying not to think of anything else. Instead, I tried to run through the beginning of my meditation sequence. Jenny? Asked Musashi-sensei, interrupting my thoughts. Yes, Musashi-sensei. I want to thank you. For what? For your love of the Admiral. You have made his last days a pleasure, even with all the work that he has been doing. I put the mug down carefully. I will miss him greatly, Musashi-sensei. There was a long pause. I will miss him too, but I am glad he chose you. I wiped my eyes. I hope I can live up to his legacy. You will create your own legacy, Jenny, and it will be just as great. All of my admirals since Darren have been exceptional people. I don't see myself as exceptional, Sensei. That is why you are, he said. And Jenny? Yes? You may call me Mia. We are part of each other now. I nodded, then picked up my mug and finished the milk. I am honored, Mia. So am I. Chapter 42. Jenny. The door of the docking tube opened, and several people from Sun Tzu exited the demon. A man with blonde hair saw me through the crowd, and his eyes lit up. Jenny! He exclaimed and waved to me. Marcus? He nodded, and I stepped forward to hug him. It's good to see you, he said. You too. You look so different. No Lulu this time? Marcus looked sad for a moment. Yes, well, I had to do surgery after New York, and as for Lulu, she's finally decided to retire. Last I heard, she's on vacation. Well, if anyone deserves some time off, it's her. Are you hungry? Marcus's stomach rumbled in answer. Yeah, all the time these days, because of the bots. I finally caved and got the full set. I nodded. Why don't I show you to your quarters and then we can have dinner? Don't you have more important things to do? He asked, as we walked out of the lounge. To be honest, right this moment, I don't. My sort of secretary says I should rest and talk with friends when I can. That's healthy, he said. You consider me a friend? Yes. I mean, we did live together in New York Colony for a while, and we went through getting our covers blown together. I'd say that counts. He smiled. It's hard to drop Unity social norms, isn't it? Definitely. But to be honest, I like Survey social norms better. Especially the consent and privacy rules. Same. Among other things. He stayed quiet for a moment, but didn't elaborate. I left him with his thoughts as we reached his quarters. I palmed open the door for him and we went in. The soldier with his bags came in behind us and put them by the door. You can wait outside, I said, and they left. Marcus picked up his briefcase and brought it to the table. Is this room secure, or should we go to your quarters for the briefing? This whole ship is secure, but Mia, can you make sure no one comes in here until I leave? Yes, apprentice, Mia said. Wow, so formal, said Marcus. I grinned. Well, yeah, in front of you. All right. I'll catch you up on how we got here, and then we can go over our part of the plan. He then told me about his and Lulu's trip to Geneva Colony and what happened with the Zimmerleys and creating the countermeasure. When he told me about what happened to Giannis's brother, Lulu's retirement made more sense. Marcus looked pained when he talked about Geneva, and I knew he wasn't telling me everything. I didn't press him on it. If he wanted to talk about it, he would. So, now we come to the present, he said. Hang on, weren't we talking about food earlier? Oh, right, sorry, I forgot. I checked my wristcom. Actually, it's almost dinner time, and I need to be present at the community dinner. You can come and eat with everyone, or you can use the printer here if you want some time to yourself. It should only be about an hour. I'll come with you. It's been a while since I've had dinner here. Oh, right, you were with us during your own training. I think we're between Sunset classes at the moment. I stood up. I need to go and put on my formal uniform, so I'll meet you there. Sure. Good, I said, and headed to the door, then turned around. I looked at Marcus and saw pain clouding his face. You know, if you want to talk about whatever, just ask. He gave a sad smile. Thanks, Jenny. I stood in front of the crowd of volunteers the next morning in my formal apprentice kimono, with the Admiral's sword belted around my waist. It was the Admiral's sign that he had given command to me while he was gone. None of the Sun Tzu people were at this meeting except Marcus, since they had already been briefed. There were a lot of familiar and new faces turning to face me once Lucian yelled for attention. They stood in neat rows in the main hall. Remember, you passed your 9th Dan test and all of them passed their Dan test, said Mia. They know their job is dangerous. I nodded, then began. Thank you all for coming. Please sit. They all sat on the floor. Mia, secure the hall. Done, he said as the doors around the room closed and locked. As you all saw in the announcement, this mission is top secret and compartmentalized. You are not allowed to talk to anyone outside this room about what the mission is until after it's over and you are told that the status has been changed. It is extremely important that there are no leaks about this mission, especially to anyone in Unity. If you have any doubts about being able to keep this mission secret, this is your last chance to leave before the briefing. No one will be punished for doing so. I waited for a full minute, but no one left the room. I nodded to Marcus, and he stood up from his chair and came beside me. This is Marcus Rohner, coordinator from Sun Tzu. He will brief you on the mission parameters. I stepped back and sat on the floor behind Marcus. Thank you. 15 years ago, a malicious program was released into Unity's financial markets. Its initial objective was to provide extra income for its creators. Unfortunately, there was a bug in the code. Then the program exploited it and began to manipulate more than just the markets. To make a long story short, this program's manipulations allowed the new Harmonists to come into power, as well as financing slavers and other criminals or organizations. It has outed Sun Tzu and UI agents and killed others. Chaos, as we call this program, has no problems killing to ensure its survival. His voice cracked, making me wonder if this was the source of his pain. The agent he was working with at Genovian Union on Geneva was killed when he, Lulu, and this agent were in an air car accident caused by Chaos, said Mia. That explains a lot. Marcus continued. The creator of the program and I have made a counter-program that needs to be delivered by hand. In approximately a week, you will receive outer colony drop information from UI. The couriers will have 2 drops. First drop will be at each system station, and you will have a picket programmed with the drop coordinates. You will jump next to the station, release the picket, then immediately jump to the colony and land. The second drop will be on the colony itself. You will have contact information for a UI agent on the colony, who will be the one who will use the data key you supply. Deploying the counter program on a major colony server. If you do not make contact with the UI agent on your assigned colony, you will need to find a way to deliver the program yourself. You'll need to go in civilian clothes and will have civilian legends to use on the planet. I stood up. Thank you, Marcus. I know this mission sounds simple, but to reiterate what Marcus said, this program will do whatever it takes to survive. For those of you who don't know my history, I used to be the hacker called Niemand. There's a murmur among the soldiers. When I left New York Colony, I transitioned and joined Unity Fleet. Before I went on the New Harmony mission, I was outed by Chaos acting through the Kozalezi family on New York Colony and the New Harmonists. Until recently, there was a warrant for my arrest in Unity. The outcome for me was the least damaging of what Chaos has done. I took a deep breath. For the couriers, you are to get the counter program deployed by whatever means possible, especially if meeting with the UI agent falls through. Otherwise, you are to protect the UI agent until the program is deployed. For the pilots that are going with the couriers, you will wait with the demons. If your courier does not return by 1 solar day after the deadline, you leave the planet. You'll receive the written instructions with the picket and the data key. Pay attention to the deployment date and time, as it is crucial that you or the agent deploy the program as close to that time as possible. I looked around the room. Any questions? Who's doing the inner colonies? One of the soldiers asked. UI agents will be handling the inner colonies. We're handling the outer colonies because our demons are faster. I waited for more questions, but no one said anything. All right, any other questions can be directed to me or to Vice Admiral Lucia in person. None of this can be relayed through comms from this moment on. Understood? Yes, sir, said the soldiers. Dismissed, I said, and the soldiers got up from the floor and started to leave the room. Marcus came over to me. Why did you tell them your story? They're my Sangha, Marcus, my community. They need to trust me in leadership and know why I'm sending them on this mission, and that one of their own has been affected. They know that if I was able to, I'd go as a courier. Will some of them recognize who you were? He asked. I looked him in the eye. Yes, but it doesn't matter anymore, Marcus. My story is out. There's no one left to do me any more harm. Marcus looked confused for a second. Then I saw the realization in his eyes. I see. He took a deep breath and said, I'll send a picket to Sunny and let him know we have all the volunteers we need and are just waiting for the data. I nodded, and he left the room. The room was now empty except for me and my guard. I went to the door and stopped in front of them. I'm going to the Admiral's meditation room. Let Lucia know. If anyone has questions for me, you can let them in. Yes, sir, they said, and tapped their wrist comm as they followed me out into the hall. The candles on the altar were already lit when I entered. I was grateful for the abbot's thoughtfulness. I took off my shoes and grabbed a cushion from the side of the room. I sat and began my meditations, acknowledging the thoughts and memories that came into my mind, then letting them go. Thanks to the Buddha, the memories no longer hurt as they once did, but it was still hard when I talked about those years. I focused on my breathing and my awareness of the room around me. The door opened, and I heard someone take off their shoes and pat across the carpet towards me. I felt them kneel down in front of me and wait. I opened my eyes to see Ray kneeling before me. Hi, I said. Hey. I waited patiently for her to talk again, but as the silence stretched on, I could see Ray becoming uncomfortable. I raised an eyebrow at her. She took a deep breath and said, I'm sorry I was angry at you before you left for New York. About you not being interested in me. I accept your apology, I said gently. Ray stared at me for a moment. Did you get the bastard on New York colony? Yes, although I didn't dispatch him personally. I was there, though. Good. She turned her face away for a moment. I did know who you were once you told me. I think I even saw you once before you left the colony. The Kozolezis killed my uncle and destroyed his business because he gave money to the Yakuza for protection instead. I hated the cause, Jenny, and it was hard to want to like you when I found out the rest of your story. I still felt for you after I found out, since knowing you, I knew you couldn't have murdered anyone without cause, even then. I'm glad your father's dead. I nodded, too emotional to speak. The memory of the torture room came into my mind, and it made me wonder if the man my father tried to make me kill was her uncle. I tried not to think about that. I felt the wetness on my cheeks and wiped it on my kimono sleeve. You're volunteering? I finally managed to ask. Ray nodded. I felt I had to. Who knows how many of us chaos has killed? She stood up, bowed, and started to walk towards the door. I turned to watch her leave, but she stopped before the door and turned around. "You're going to be an excellent admiral, Jenny," she said. "You're the best I've seen." "Thanks," I said, and Ray left the room. Chapter 43. John Smith. "Are you sure you want to bring these copies with you?" asked Jane Doe as we left the vault. "They're going to ask, and we have a few days to discuss it. To be frank, I thought they'd ask about it as soon as they boarded. But it seems that Sun Tzu in this mission has dazzled them into forgetting about it. Regara, anyway. I think Bill will ask first. And don't worry, I'll destroy the copies as soon as they've seen them." "If you say so, John," she said, still skeptical. "I do say so. I understand the risk, but we owe Unity for this, and in this business sometimes to create allies you have to have a little bit of trust. Also, I hope that it will keep their intelligence service on our side and avoid unnecessary bloodshed." Jane didn't have anything to say to that, so I asked, "Have the Zimmerleys left yet?" Jane nodded. "About an hour ago. Poor Giannis looked a little dazed. Do you think Mercury will take to him?" "Sun Tzu thinks so, as does Hef. They're usually a good judge about these things." "What do you think?" I smiled. "I think he's the right person at the right time. I also think it's best to get him out of reach before the Unity folks think of putting a warrant out for his arrest. It's bad enough they still have warrants out for Jack and Marcia. At least Jenny is seen as a liberator, and the Unity Black Caucus had her record expunged." "They couldn't do the same for Marcia?" "She's not seen as a liberator no matter what the Unity Black Caucus thinks." Jane Doe shook her head. Fucking politicians. "Yes," I said, as we reached the S-Demon airlock. "Well, Jane, you have my instructions. We'll see you at the negotiation coordinates." "Good luck, sir," she said, handing me the metal case she'd been carrying. "Thank you, Jane," I said, and opened the airlock. As we were having dinner, strapped into our chairs in the lounge, the deputy director and Bill started talking about Unity politics and their relations to Survey. I mostly listened, asking a few pointed questions here and there. After a while, they stopped talking. Bill laughed. "Fucking spook," he said, looking at me. "As if I'd waste an opportunity," I said, "especially when we've had a dearth of information from Unity in the last couple of years." "He's got you there, Bill," said David. Bill narrowed his eyes. "There's been something I've been meaning to ask you, though. Why did you take Marcus and destroy the research lab? Now that I've seen how Survey works, I know you don't hold back jump drive tech to corner the market. You don't need the money." David nodded. "Yes, I was wondering that myself." "I had anticipated you asking, if you give me a moment." I unbuckled myself from my chair and went to the compartment where I had stowed the metal case. I palmed it open, then floated to the door and tapped the security button next to it, locking it. Then I went over to the wall screen, opened the case, took out the small black data key, and inserted it into the key port in the wall. As you know, when we took down New Harmony, we created 2 micronovas that resulted in an EMP. It was enough to take out all native electronics on New Harmony and light up their skies for several weeks. We used a human-created modified jump drive to create these micronovas. What I'm about to show you is what happens when a human-created jump drive is utilized at full power. Start playback. The screen lit up, showing Musashi's recording of the nova that Loki had set off over 500 years ago. It never failed to terrify me, even in its strange beauty. David and Bill both watched with mouths open. That's real?" asked Bill when it finished. "Yes, the first detonation of one of these was a test version on a demon, which killed 10 people, including Dr. Nigel Evans, one of the founders of Unity. It was a murder-suicide by the neurodivergent woman who created it. The explosion disintegrated the demon they were in and reduced the planet they were orbiting and most of the star system to molecules and small fragments. The one you're watching was the second detonation. It devastated 2 star systems, one of which had sentient life. Bill stared at me, blinking. What? He asked. Holy shit, said David. And you use this at New Harmony? I shook my head. Ours was 1/10 of this size. 1/10? Fucking hell, Bill said. And it was Dr. Nigel Evans, you say, who made it? Well, no, it was an apprentice of his, but he and an AI were manipulated by her to work on it. Why? Nigel Evans is my many times great uncle. He was a family legend even before he left on Trinity Station. Fucking hell. Well, that explains a lot about you, Bill, I said with a grin. Oh? From the videos I've seen from Secundus, I said, you and Nigel have a similar personality, including a penchant for expletives. Bill stared for a moment, then started laughing. David raised an eyebrow. I waited for him to calm down, then said, this is why we don't allow Unity to create its own jump drive technology, and why we torched the lab that Marcus was working in. All but one of the scientists, including Marcus, were accepted as Survey citizens and are now working on other projects. They were shown this footage as an incentive to stop their work. You said all but one of the scientists, asked David. One was uncooperative, I said flatly. David's eyes widened and Bill nodded, understanding what I meant. I removed the data key, wiped it with my picket, and put the key in the recycler. I floated back to my seat and buckled in again. Patiently, I waited for them to digest the information they'd been given. You didn't have to show us that, said David. No, I didn't, but I felt we owed you an explanation of our actions in light of our newfound friendship. It is one of the 3 things that truly terrifies me, and as a narcissist and a sociopath, there are very few things that do. What are the other 2 things? Bill asked. I just smiled and sat back in my chair. Fair enough, he said. We took the Genovian shuttle back to Unity Hub. Instead of Ebo waiting in the docking lounge, there was a contingent of fleet security waiting for us. Oh, damn, said Bill. I suppose we weren't as clever as we thought we were. David sighed. Apparently the all-clear wasn't good enough. You 2 don't have to come with me, especially you, John. I'm coming, since I'll probably need you to spring my people out of detention, I said. The deputy shook his head. You're insane. Clinically, yes. Bill chuckled. David shook his head again and led the way out of the docking tube. He stopped in front of a woman with short dark hair and a dark blue pantsuit who was frowning. What the fuck, David? She said. I'll explain everything to you, Rebecca, but we can't discuss it here. Do we have a skiff handy? Why does this require a skiff? You were abducted by a Genovian Union lawyer and a retired agent. Seems pretty clear what happened here. I can almost feel David rolling his eyes. Rebecca, trust me, this requires a skiff and these 2 men to be present. I'll talk to you, but I want these 2 arrested for kidnapping and put in detention. David looked at me, and I gave a brief nod. He raised an eyebrow. It would have happened sooner or later, David. Do what you have to do. All right, Rebecca, he said. He gestured to one of the fleet security officers who stepped forward with a pair of electronic handcuffs and put them on me. Oh, for fuck's sake, really? Bill started to say when one of the other officers came to him. I looked at him, and he stopped whatever it was he was going to say next, and obediently put on the cuffs. Officer, I said politely, and we were escorted to fleet detention. You have been listening to Tales from Flat Space. If you want to support me in my writing, there are many ways to do it. Share this podcast, follow me on my Twitch channel, or buy my books. All you have to do is go to revgenapon.net and click on the relevant links. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.